Okay, yeah, so good evening, everyone. Yeah, so today we're actually going to be talking about fragments. Okay, I'll be looking at fragments in today's class. Now, in the last class, we talked about, we looked into activities, we talked about the activity life cycle, and, actually built an application. Okay, we played around with a dictionary application where you can actually see the list of words, the mean and their meanings and the likes. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about fragments. Okay, what fragments are, and then how we can actually make use of them. Okay, that's basically what we're going to be looking into today. Now, so let's actually start like this. Now, if you, for some of us, if you check your contact application on your Android phone, okay, well, I don't use an Apple phone, so I'm just going to say for those who use Android, okay, and probably any Android device at all, okay, when you check your call log, okay, you can actually see, you can navigate in 3 different screens. Okay, your search is kind of like constant. It stays there where you can search for your contacts, but you can probably see, you can just swipe and then see your call log. You can swipe, see contacts and the like. You can also see favorites. Okay, you can see recent contacts. You can just see voicemail. You can see your favorites. So now those separate screens, okay, those are actually what we call what fragments. Okay, those are actually what fragments. Now they exist in a single activity. They exist in a single what activity. So what are fragments? Fragments are basically what we call a reusable piece of UI. That's a reusable piece of, let me just, so reusable piece of UI. Reusable piece of UI. Okay, that's basically what a fragment is. They can actually be reused and embedded in one or more activities. Okay, so just like tapping on your favorites, you get to see your favorite list of favorite contacts you actually probably call often. You can tap on recent, you get to see the recent call log. You can tap on contacts, you get to see contacts, even on your WhatsApp also, where you can swipe between groups and then your call log. Okay, yes, so those are actually what fragments. Okay, that they call them what fragments, reusable piece of what UI. So we're actually going to be using it in our current application. Okay, in the current application we have, we're actually going to use it. So you can actually show multiple fragments at once on a single screen. Okay, you can show multiple fragments at once on a single screen. That's, well, we basically see that for tablet devices. Okay, where you can have one particular fragment showing probably, let's say maybe if you have home, contacts and all those stuff. Okay, and then the next fragment showing much more details. When you click on home, you see much more details represented in another screen, but that's actually just another fragment. But fragments are also screens, so don't be confused. Okay, so fragments are actually very important, especially when you want to build high quality applications, and we're going to actually learn the basics of fragments. So we're going to convert this word application. If you see, we're actually using 2 activities. The first activity, actually main activity here, shows the list of letters. So let me okay, so let's just get that, and then need to open that for you. So it shows, so this shows you the list of what letters. Okay, and then of course the detail activity shows the list of words. Okay, shows the lists of what words. Now, okay, let's take this out. I think I was trying to show something. Yeah, so we're going to convert this to actually make use of what fragments. We're going to convert it to make use of fragments, and also we're going to learn about the navigation components, and we'll actually work with it. Okay, we'll work with it. Work what we call a navigation graph, and this helps us to navigate between fragments in the same host activity. Remember, fragments actually, they are hosted in an activity. An activity hosts what? Fragments. So just, you can see activity as a super class, and then fragments are like the child class that are hosted in that. Or you can actually see it as a, when you're designing, okay, you can see it as a view group that houses what? Views. Okay, so that's actually that. So let's get right into it. Okay, let's get right into it. So the first thing is we need to understand the fragment life cycle. Okay, that's the first thing we're going to talk about, the fragment life cycle. Now, remember we said a fragment is a reusable piece of UI. Now, just like activities, fragments also have a life cycle, and they can respond to user input. Okay, a fragment is always contained within the view hierarchy of an activity when it is actually shown on screen. So now, because of due to the fact that it is reusable, okay, it's actually even possible for multiple fragments to be hosted simultaneously by a single activity. That means you can have multiple fragments being hosted on one activity, and each fragment manages its own separate life cycle. Okay, so just like activities, fragments can be initialized. Okay, remember we looked at the various activity life cycles. We have the from when it is initialized to when it is destroyed. We talked about the on start, the on resume, on pause, and every other one you can actually see on the screen. So fragments can be initialized, and they can also be removed from memory, just like activities. And throughout their existence, okay, they appear, they disappear, and they also reappear on screen. And just like activities also, they have a life cycle with several states, and they also provide several methods that you can override to respond to transitions between them. So the fragment lifecycle has 5 states. Okay, it has 5 states. So I'm just going to let me just do some stuff here. So it has 5 states. It has the initialized state. Okay, now in the initialized state, a new instance of the fragment has been initialized. Okay, that's basically what happens in that state. In the initialized state, it means that a new instance of that fragment has been initialized. Okay, the next state it has is the created state. Now, this created state is the first fragment lifecycle method. This is where the first fragment lifecycle method is actually being called. Okay, so during this state, the view that is associated with the fragment is also created. Okay, the view that is associated, whatever view, text view, button, image view, whatever view, okay, is also what's created. Now you have this next one is the started state. Okay, now in the started state, okay, so let me do this. Just want to, okay, yeah. So in the started state, okay, the fragment is visible on screen, but it does not have focus. Okay, remember when we talked about having focus means the user can interact with it. Okay, so in the started state, the fragment is visible on screen, but it does not have focus. That means it cannot respond to user input. And then we have the resumed. We have the resumed state. And in this resumed state, that is when the fragment is visible and has focus. And then finally, of course, we have the destroyed state. Yeah, the destroyed state. That in this state, the fragment object has been de-instantiated. Okay, so now the methods, of course, just like the activities, there are methods that are being called. There are methods you can override. Okay, that methods that are associated with these states. Now we have let's look at the first one. So the first one is the onCreate. Now this is in the created state, you have the method onCreate that is what associated with it. Now, in this onCreate here, the fragment has been instantiated and it is in the created state. But however, the views has not been created yet. Unlike your activity, okay? Unlike in the activity. So in the onCreate of the fragment, it basically just means that the fragment has been instantiated. When the onCreate method is called, means that the fragment has been instantiated, okay? And it's in the created state. But the corresponding view has not been created yet. Now, we have another method called still in the created state, okay? Called the onCreate view method. Okay. Now, in this onCreate view method, okay, this is where you inflate the layout. Now, in the activity, you inflate the layout in your onCreate view. So, but in onCreate rather, but in onCreate in fragments, we inflate it in onCreate view. That's where you inflate the layout. Okay, this means that the fragment has entered the created state. Okay, and then another state that is also in the created state, another method rather, is the onView created. That's another method associated with the created state, onView created. So just like the name implies. So this is called after the view has been created. So in this method, this is where you actually do your binding, where you bind specific views to properties, okay, by either doing your find view by ID or you just do your view binding, okay. But in recent times, we inflate our layout in the onView created method and not the onCreate view, okay. That's for recent times, but this is something you should actually just know. So now that's for the created state. So these are the methods. Now for the started state, the method that is being you override that's associated with it is the Onstart method. Okay, so Onstart means that the fragment has entered the started state. And of course, remember in the started state means the fragment is visible on screen, but it doesn't have focus. For the unresumed, of course, you know that unresumed state. So the unresumed method, okay? So here, the fragment has entered the resumed state and now has focus. Having focus means it can respond to, user input. Now, we actually have another method that is also associated with the started state in a way. So I'm just going to put it here, and that's the onPause. So the onPause, this fragment, when you call the onPause method, it means that the fragment has re-entered the started state where it no longer has focus. It has re-entered the started state. So it does not have focus. It is visible on screen, but it does not have focus. Okay, so take note of that. And then we have the onStop. So the onStop is I'll just put it in the onCreated here, in the created state. So the onStop method is called when the fragment has re-entered, okay? Re-entered the created state, okay? onPause means it has re-entered the started state. The UI is visible, but there's no focus. onStop means it has re-entered the created state. That means the object is instantiated, but it's no longer presented on the screen. It's just instantiated. Okay, it's just instantiated. Now, for the destroyed state, the methods that are being called there, of course, we have the Undestroyed View, and of course, this is actually called right before the fragment enters the destroyed state. So just before the fragment enters destroyed state, the Undestroyed View is called. So here the view has already been removed from memory, but the fragment object still exists. Okay, the view has been removed from memory, but the fragment object still exists. And then the last one is the Undestroyed method. So at this point, the fragment has entered the destroyed state. So the fragment object has been removed from memory, everything, and is out. So the lifecycle states and this callback method, they're actually just similar to what we used for activities. But you need to keep in mind the difference with the onCreate method. In the activity onCreate method, that's where you inflate your layout. But here, for our fragments, okay, it just means that the fragment has been instantiated and is in the created state. Okay, but the views has not been created yet. You can't, layout has not been inflated. Okay, so with activities, you would actually use onCreate method to inflate your layout, to bind your views. But for fragments, no, it's just called before the view is created. onCreate is actually called. So we can't actually inflate the layout in onCreate. For fragments, you can't inflate the layout in onCreate. Sorry, it shouldn't be onCreate rather. Thank you. So you can't actually inflate your layout for fragments here. Okay, you can't do that. Okay, so but you can do it in onCreate view. Okay, you can actually do it in onCreate view. Then after the view has been created, the onView created method is actually what's called for binding, but binding of views. But like I said, inflation recently, okay, is now actually done in onView created. So we'll actually see how that is done. Okay, so let's move on. Let's move on. So how do we create a fragment? Okay, how do we create a fragment? So we want to actually navigate, we want to move our application to now use fragments instead of activities. Okay, so we're going to create fragments now. So we'll do that together. So just like activities, each fragment that we're going to add, we'll have two files. Okay, one for the layout and then the other one for the classes for you to write your code. Okay, so to create a fragment, so I'm just going to go to my package name. I'm just going to right click, new. I'll come down to fragments. Okay, then I'll choose a blank fragment. Okay, I'll choose a blank fragment. So here I'm going to just change the name. I'm going to say letter list. So that is a list of letters. So I'm naming it in a way that I would understand. So I'm just going to click on finish. That's all. The language already is Kotlin. So now you can take out all these guys. Okay, can actually just take out all these guys. Not really going to use it. So I'll take out my onCreate. I'm not writing any code here for now. I'm going to take out this. So I'm just going to leave the onCreate view for now. I'll just leave it for now. Then let's create the other one, the word list. That's going to replace that detail activity. So blank fragment. So list of words. So I'll say word list fragments. Let's finish that. Okay, so I'm going to clear this out. I just want to leave only onCreate view for now. Okay, so that's of course. Please, if at any point you have a question, just drop it on the chat or just raise your hand. Okay. So let's move on. Okay, so let's move on. So first things first. So I'm now going to move. So our main activity here had the layout, had the. So I'm just going to take this guy out. Okay. So I'm just going to copy. Not really. So you need to be very careful when you're actually copying. Okay. Now in the right sense, I would actually just copy all this and just put that in letter list. This is a list of letters. Yes. So I'll just come here, split, and then paste it here. But if I do, notice something, this context here is with respect to the particular class, which is the letter list fragment. But for the main activity, this is with respect to, it points towards the activity. So if I copy this, I'm now pointing to the activity too. So Let me just copy only the recycler view. That's just what I need. Okay. So I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, I'll do the same thing for the word list also. So that's in our activity details. So I'm just going to copy this. And then for our word list fragments, just going to replace that. Okay, so we are actually good to, so we are good to go. We are good to go. So now let's implement the letter list fragment. Okay, let's do some coding. Okay, now just like we had with activities, we actually need to inflate the layouts, right? And everything. So let me do something. Let me do something. I'm going to take out, let me now take out this guy. And then, so let's take out this and let's do this. So let's start. Now, so just like I said, with activities, we have to inflate the layout, right? And then bind individual views. So if you're doing this, you can actually just call your layout here. Actually, you can just say out of layouts dot fragment. Okay, for some reason my autocorrect is not responding. Fragment underscore letter underscore list. Okay. I think I may have to, well, let's just move on. Let me, so just hope we don't have much issues. Okay, so let's do that. So now we're just going to make some few differences actually, because remember, we're working with fragment lifecycle and not an activity lifecycle. Okay, we're working with fragment lifecycle. So let me just do something. So I'm going to right click here. Now I have split and move to right. So I'm going to split this guy and move it, the main activity, and move it down here. Okay, then have my letter list here. So I can actually easily just move what I want. And I want you guys to actually now see differences, various differences. Okay, so yeah, so first of all, we need to implement view binding in our letter list fragments. We need to implement view binding. Okay, so just like we did now, but we're going to now get a nullable reference to the binding. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say private. Okay, I think I may have to, okay, I don't like the file. I'm actually typing all through, so I may have to restart this Android Studio, but let's just move on. So private var, I'm going to call this binding, but I'll add an underscore. I'll explain why. So let's see our fragment letter list. So we need to change this, okay, because we need to make to enable, well, we're using view binding. So let me see. This is the thing. I'll need suggestions, but my suggestion is not working. So so I think I'm just going to quickly just restart my Android Studio, or let's see, we're rebuilding, just solve that. Let's see. Let's just do that also. Probably if it doesn't, because I need to get some generated classes and I don't have to type out. Not everything I'll have to type out. So let's just rebuild this, and then if it doesn't, then I probably will have to restart the Android Studio. Okay. Okay, rebuilding. Okay. Let's see. I have a lot of things running on my system, so that's a lot of things. So may have to close out a few things. I have to close out a few things. So okay, free note. Okay, so while that is actually building, so what we actually want to do is to implement view binding, okay? And first of all, we actually need to get a nullable reference to, okay, okay, so can you help me with the suggestions now? Okay, so guys, so just a second, let me restart this. Let me restart this Android Studio. I think that may just solve that problem. Okay. Okay, so okay, I think so let's see if we're good to go. I need the binding of this. So let me confirm if I have my suggestion stuff back. Okay. I don't have it yet. Okay, so I may actually have to do a lot of manual typing of code. Okay. Oh, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. So what we're basically doing, okay, I'm trying to get a nullable reference to this fragment letter list binding. Now, this is an auto-generated class, okay, when you enable your view binding, just like we did, of course, you know. So binding classes like this, they're actually just generated by Android Studio for each layout file. As far as your enabled view binding property, your Gradle, which we had actually done, okay, so we can just assign properties in our fragment class for each of this. So now the type should actually be nullable, okay, and then we're giving it an initial value of null. Now, why are we actually doing this? Now, the reason is because you can't inflate the layout until onCreateView is called. Okay, because we are looking at the fragments now. You can't actually inflate the layout until onCreateView is what called. So there's actually a period of time in between when the instance of this fragment called letter list fragment is created. And that happens when its life cycle begins with onCreate, okay? And when this property is actually usable. So since we have that space, that's why we actually making this null, because it is possible, since we are not inflating the layout, okay, you can't actually make use of this, you get a null. So for safety reasons, that's why we're actually doing that. This is why we are making it nullable, because it is possible for you to get a null value for this binding property. Okay, so but keep in mind that fragments views can be created and destroyed several times throughout its life cycle. Okay, so for this reason, we now need to reset the value in another life cycle method, which is the Undestroyed View. Okay, so but we'll get to that. So here now, because this is nullable, every time we now access a property, okay, of this binding, okay, you know, maybe like say binding dots, you want to get a button, or binding dot, you want to get a text. Whenever you do that, you need to include this nullable sign, okay? You need to include that for null safety. But however, that doesn't mean you have to litter your code everywhere with question mark just because of one null value. So if you're actually certain that a value won't be null when you assess it, you can now append it with, we have this double quotation, double exclamation mark rather. You can append it to its type name. That's if you are certain that a value won't be null, if you're very sure that it won't be null, and then you have this nullable binding property, then you can actually make use of this. Only if you are certain. If you're not, please don't. Okay, so you need to use this as sparingly as possible. Okay, you shouldn't use it often. Okay, so another thing, just note, whenever you're making a variable nullable using this guy, okay, it's actually a good idea. Just limit the usage to only one of just few places. Okay, very to avoid crashes to your application. So what we'll now do here, the next thing we're going to do now is to create a new property called binding, but now without this underscore. Okay, so let me do something. I'm going to say private. Oh, this stuff. Okay, binding. This one I'm going to call it binding without this, and I'm going to introduce it to something now. Get. So what do we want to get? We want to get the. This is interesting. Today is going to be very interesting. It's going to be a lot of typing, and then I'll add this. Okay, so here the get here actually means that this property is get only. And what that means is that you can get the value, but once assigned, just as we have done here, we have assigned this to this. So because we're using this, we're just saying that, look, this variable called binding is a get only. And once you have assigned a value to it, you can't assign it to something else. Okay? You can't assign it to what? Something what else. Okay? So in Kotlin, actually, and well, programming in general, though, you often actually meet properties that is preceded by an underscore. And what that means is that the property isn't intended to be assessed directly. Like, you don't want to assess that property directly. So in our case, we're going to assess the view binding in our letter list fragment with the binding property with this young man, not with this one. This one does not need to be assessed outside of this letter list fragment class. Okay, so now we're going to implement onCreate. And the reason we are implementing onCreate, okay, is because we want to implement our options menu. We want to implement our option menu. So to do that in a fragment, you have to oh wow, I'm going to really have to type things now. Okay, so override on create. I think you have a saved instance state, yeah. And this is of type bundle, which is nullable. And then there you have the super dots on create, right? Yeah. And then pass in the saved instance. Okay, so this is actually how the onCreate method looks now. Right? Yeah. Oh, could have just copied that. Okay, but that's okay. So we call a method called set has option menu, and then we'll pass in true. Okay, we'll pass in what? True. So basically, this is because we want to, we're saying that, look, this particular fragment should what implement the option menu. Okay, so for fragments, you actually have to do this. You actually have to do this. Yeah, Falabi, my studio is still analyzing, and I wonder what it is still. I wonder what it is analyzing for a very long time. Okay, that's that. So. Okay, so let's move on. So remember that with fragments, the layout is inflated rather in onCreate view, just like we talked about. So let's just use onCreate view, but moving forward, I'll show you, we'll start making use of onView created. So, but let's just do that. So onCreate view. Okay, so let me see something. both of them are still analyzing. Okay, so it's going to be a long typing though. So override function on create view. Okay, now on create view takes an inflator, and it's of type layout inflator. If I don't make any typographical error, it takes a container, which is of a view group type, and of course it's actually nullable, and then a saved instance. Okay, it also takes that, which is of type bundle, and then it returns. This is of type view. Of course, it returns a view. So make this null because it's possible to get a null, and then so this is where we now write our code. So I'm going to say, I'm now going to call, so this is where I'm just going to instantiate this guy, our binding property. I'm going to say it's going to be our fragment letter list binding, which is the generated class dot inflate. And then we'll now pass in our inflator. Okay, so this inflator is this guy. Okay, pass in the container. And then the last, okay, false, passing false is for the view group. Okay. And then I'm just going to save our view is equal to, I want to create a view variable, and I'll say binding. So you can see now, I'm actually now going to use this guy. This is what I'm going to use, not this one. I'm now going to say binding dot root, and then I can now return view, okay, because that's a return statement for return value for the create view. So that's basically how we actually would do that. Okay. Now, next we're going to do is so here I'm going to create a variable here now. Let's see. Let's do that here. Should I? So let me create a property. Let me just do this. So let me do this here. Let's create a late init. So just like we have here for our recycler view. So I'm just going to do this. Okay. So now I'm now going to set the value of this recycler views property in our on view created. Okay. Override on view created. Okay, that's please, in case you notice any typographical error, please just point me to it. Call my attention by probably just raising your hand. Okay, so this is of type view, and then saved instance states bundle. Okay, just gonna pass that here. Okay. Okay, so here I'll then call my recycler view. So I'll instantiate it. So I'm going to just get the, so this is our binding. We're just, so where did we, so binding dot recycler view. So basically just copy this actually. So this is how we are transferring that. Okay, so that's actually that. Then I'll call my choose layout. Okay, so it's just the same thing. Okay, but the structure changes. This is supposed to show red. My this is still analyzing. Well, let it keep on analyzing. Then another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to override the Undestroyed View. And in the undestroyed view, I'm going to reset this our binding property back to null. Okay, because the view doesn't exist, so there's no need holding references to views. Okay, so there's no need actually doing that. So I'm going to override on destroy view. I think so. Of course, I have to call the super dots on destroy view. Okay, so here I'm just going to set my binding property back to null. Okay. So the only other thing that is so if you notice, we have a few differences now. You see how we have our create options menu. Okay. And so we're actually going to use these guys. Okay, we're actually going to use these guys, but there's just a little difference. Okay, there's a little difference. So let me copy, first of all, let me take the create options menu. Now, the little difference here is that when you're using an activity, okay, you only pass in its the activity class. It has a global menu inflator, which is this guy. Okay, that's why we're able to just say menu inflator dot inflate. This is a global property. Okay, it's a global property. Now, assuming this was done analyzing, you see this would have actually had a color, I think blue. Yeah, so it's a global property. Okay, now, but Fragment does not actually have this global property. Okay, instead, the menu inflator is passed into the onCreate options menu. Okay, it's passed into it as a parameter. So you would have something like this. Of course, you don't need to type this if you're not having this issue I am having right now. Once you just type on create options, you see it, and then you can press enter. So it's actually passed into, so using whenever fragments is passed into the method. Okay, and here we don't return so there's no return true or false here. Okay, so I'm just going to take out this. So you don't use the menu inflator now, you now use this inflator variable, since it's of type this. So this becomes inflator.inflate. Every other thing is still fine. This other code is still fine. This other code is still fine. So we're not changing that. Remember, we're just transitioning to making use of fragments. Okay. So I'm going to move these guys. Okay. So I think I can take this out. We understand the concept of, or let me just comment it out. So this function, choose layout, set icon, I'm now going to, I can actually just cut it. I'll take it over here. And then also, I don't, yeah, this other guy on options item selected, okay, I'll just take that out and also bring it down here. Okay, I'll bring it down here. So I think everything is still okay. So the only thing we have here is on create options menu. Well, I'll let that stay there first. So finally, let's see. So this I'm going to copy this. So this is linear layout manager. So I need this. I need this guy. Yes. So I think that's actually solves that. So yeah, that's fine. So I can remove all this now. I'm just going to delete all this. I'm going to delete all this. So the only thing that our main activity is going to do now is just inflate the layout. Okay, do it whole binding stuff. So I can take out this set content view, since we're actually, well, can leave that. So okay, no, we don't need this. We're already using this binding.root. I can take out all these things, but let me just remove them. So this is the only thing your main activity needs. It doesn't even need this one anymore. It doesn't need this one anymore, since we are now transitioning. So because remember, we said that a fragment will be hosted in an activity. So we're going to use the main activity for that. Okay, we're going to use the main activity for that. So let's do the same thing now for the, so we are done, we're actually done. Now let's now move the, so let's move the detail, the code here down to our word list. So I'm just going to, on this particular place, I'll double click on this side, or I can just move this to this. No, I need it to be vertical. Yeah, okay. Can close out this main activity though. Then word list, yeah. So I'm just going to move that. So what I'll do, I'll just copy, I'll copy this, paste this here. So first of all, we'll have our companion objects, okay? So, but now we need to, so you need to actually make sure that everything is actually working fine, okay? Remember in our word adapter, let's see, where is it? Okay. So you can see here, we're using detail activity, but we're no longer using detail activity. So we're using word list fragment. So we need to reference it because we have changed. It's no longer in detail activity. We're now using word list fragment. So, so that should solve that. Okay, and then we'll add a binding variable. Okay. Okay, so yeah. Let's see. So let's add the binding variable. So I think I'm just going to, just like we did, the other way. So, let me just copy this too. So back to our word list. I'm going to paste this here. So, but this is not fragment letter list. Okay, so this is going to be fragment word list. But don't worry, this is going to be generated for you. Okay, but this is what it should be. Okay. Okay, so then we inflate the layout. Okay, so I'm just going to do some copying and pasting. I'll take this on to well, we don't need option menu. Do we need it? Do we need it? I don't think we do. Do we? No. So let me get on create view and on view created. Okay, so I don't have to really start typing out stuff anymore. Okay, so this is not letter list, this is word list. Okay, this is word list now. So let's see, do we have anything to change? So now view created, okay, everything we have here now. Okay, so I'm going to move out stuff. Okay, so first of all, let's get okay, I'm gonna take this, let's move this over here. Okay, and then okay, so let's see. Well, so our binding.recycler view, let's pick this one by one following the, so we've gotten our this, so that will be done. Okay, we already have it here, so take out this choose layout. So after we do this, so the next thing is our recycler view layout manager. Okay, now this here actually represents the activity, but because we are not using an activity, we're using a fragment. To get the context, there's a method called require context. Okay, require what? Context. That's what actually solves that. Then finally, now this is where we're actually just going to do something different. Now in an activity, okay, we're able to just get the word adapter, passing the letter ID and passing the context. Okay, passing the context. So, but now what we are going to do, what we're actually going to do now is this. I'm going to say word adapter. Now, this letter ID, okay, the letter ID, this is where we got it from, right? Okay, so I don't want to create a variable. Okay, I just want to get it directly, but I can't use intent. So what I'm going to do is, I wish this was, so I'm going to say activity, which is the activity it's actually housing on, dot, that is from the activity I can get the intent, and then dot extras, dot get string. So I think I can just copy extras down here. Yeah, I can just copy that. Okay, and then of course the last parameter is what this, which is the same context. So I'm just going to say require context. That should solve that. And then, so well, there's another thing we're going to just add. Probably you've not seen it before, but there's a property or a method actually called add item decoration. So this is just going to put some lines below each of the items. So I'm going to use what we call the divider item decoration to divide the items. Okay, so this takes in a context. Okay, this taking a context which you can actually just type context, and then there's we now access the divider item decoration class, and we now specify how we want it, is it vertically or horizontally. So I'm going to say dot vertical. Okay. I think that's that. So of course, the last thing is to call the Undestroyed View to free up resources. So I'm going to just copy this. Okay, so let's format this very well. Okay, so I think that's so I think I can now just delete all this. Can delete all this now. Delete this guy, delete this one. Can also delete this, don't need it. Okay, so we just have our on create. Okay, so now, but I want us to because I want our fragments to be housed in just one activity. We don't need two activities now. Okay, we don't need two activities, but right now we have two fragments that actually have the list and the word list, so we do not need two activities. So I'm going to delete the detailed activity. Okay, I'm going to delete it because we don't actually need it. So I'm just going to right click. Okay, delete. So of course I'm going to use safe delete. Okay. But you can actually just uncheck it. So it just deletes everything that has to do with the detail activity. But if you're not sure, be safe. If you're not sure, be safe. Okay, so now it actually no longer exists, but we need to be very sure. So I'm going to go to our manifest and take it out of here also, so we don't have any errors. So I'll take out this activity. Okay, so yeah. So now we have two fragments, letter list fragment, word list fragment, and then we have a single activity. So this is where this will take us to where we learn about Jetpack navigation components. Okay, we learn about how do we navigate, you know, when using fragments, how do we move about. Okay, so but before that, let me just do a clean, and then let's see if we can do a rebuild, and hopefully this guy will stop analyzing. Okay, so while that is doing, so let's talk about the Jetpack navigation components. Okay, let's talk about that now. Android Jetpack, okay, it actually provides the navigation component that helps you handle any navigation implementation, either whether complex, whether simple. Okay, anyone at all. Okay, so this navigation component, it has three key parts that we're going to use to implement navigation in this application. It has three key parts. The first part is the navigation graph. Okay, that's the very first part, the navigation graph. Now, the navigation graph is actually an XML. Okay, it's an XML just like this. It's an XML, okay, extensible markup language. So it's an XML file that provides a visual representation of navigation in your application. So it gives you a visual representation of how the navigation is, where, you know, what screen goes to what screen, what fragment goes to what fragment. You get to actually see it visually, okay? And this file, it consists of destinations, okay, that correspond to individual activities or fragments. And it also includes actions between them that can actually use in your code to navigate from one destination to another. So just like with your layout files, okay, Android Studio actually provides a visual editor for you to add destinations and actions to your navigation graph. So that just helps you do that quickly. Now, that's the first aspect, the navigation graph. Now, the next one, okay, the second part of this navigation component is what we call a Nav Host. Okay, let me just, okay. So the first part is the navigation graph. And then the next one, the second part is what we call the Nav Host. So a Nav Host is just used to display destinations from a navigation, display destinations from a navigation graph within an activity. Okay, it's used to display destinations form, FORM, the form of a destination, okay, from a navigation graph within an activity. So when you navigate between fragments, the destination that is shown in the Nav Host is updated so that it gets to now show or display that destination within the activity. So we're actually going to use a built-in implementation called Nav Host Fragment. We use that in our activity. And of course, the last one is the Nav Controller. Okay, the Nav Controller. So the Nav Controller object lets you control the navigation between destinations that is displayed in your Nav Host. Now, you know, when working with intent, we had to do start activity to navigate to a new screen. You know, do start activity, then you pass in, you know, you can see it here, start activity, then we pass in an intent, okay, when we're using activities. So we did that so we're able to move to the new screen. So, but within the navigation components, we can call the Nav Controller's navigate method. Okay, that's the method in the Nav Controller, navigate method, to swap the fragment that is being displayed. So it's just swap it, just shift the fragment. So the Nav Controller, it helps you to handle common tasks like responding to the system's up button. Now, what we call the up button is what you might actually call back button, okay, which is the back arrow at the top left of your application, of some of the applications. Actually, you know, people call it the back button, but it's actually called the up button. Okay, so Nav Controller actually helps you, you know, handle, respond to that button, okay, to navigate back to the previously displayed fragment. Okay, so so now for dependencies. So of course, we're actually going to add dependencies to make use of this. So let me see. Did I add it before now? Okay, so I didn't add it before now. So it actually just means I'm going to do some typing right now. Okay. So, but that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. So let's add a dependency for using this. So so I'm going to say implementation Okay, Android X dot navigation. Okay, let me just quickly do this. Fragments, I think KTX. Okay, so I need to think of a version now. So okay, so well, let's see. 4.1. I hope I'm okay. Well, let's just see how that goes. So Android X dot navigation. Okay. Okay, so the next one, I'm going to duplicate this though, but just going to correct. So instead of fragment, I'm going to change this to UI. This is what I was waiting for. So yeah, 2.42 is the latest version. 2.42 is the latest version. Okay, so all these ones, after then just take first. 2.4 to change. Okay, navigation UI. KTX. Hope so why is it still showing? Hope I typed everything correctly. Okay, it's just analyzing, I guess. Okay, so then another thing we need to add in our top level so we need to add a class path. But before that, in our plugins here, okay, I need the Android X navigation. So there's what we call safe args. I'll talk about it. Okay, I'll talk about it and why we need it. So, and then in the project level, okay, so I already have this. I already have this, so I think I need to change. This is the recent one, right? Is it 2.4.2 or 2.4. Yeah, 2.4.2. Okay. I really want to increase all this stuff. Okay, so let's just sync this quickly. Let's just sync that. I hope every other thing is fine. Okay. So what's this save args? Now, when when we actually first implemented navigation in the words app, okay, in our dictionary app, okay, we used explicit intents between those two activities, okay, and then to pass data between the two activities, we called the put extra, okay, we called the put extra. So this is word adapter. Let me get the letter adapter. Yeah, we called the word put extra method. So I need to change this from detail to word list fragment. Okay, so we actually called the put extra. We wanted to pass data between two activities, okay, where we passed in the letter. Now, but before we actually start implementing this navigation, we actually need to the concept of, we have to implement the concept of safe args, and it's actually short for safe arguments, okay? So this Gradle plugin that we're adding, which is for the safe args, okay, is actually going to assist us with type safety when passing data between fragments, okay? You're going to assist with type safety, that is the type of data, okay? So it's just a safety measure. So let's wait for that to sync and then we'll start. Okay. So I think that's that. So let's use the navigation graph now. Let's see how fast we can actually round this up. So let's use the navigation graph. Now, we have the basic familiarity with fragments and their life cycle. Okay, so let's incorporate that. So the first we'll talk about navigation graph, okay, or nav graph. Okay, so it's just a virtual mapping of your application's navigation. Now, each screen or fragment in our case, we're using fragments now, it becomes a possible destination that can be navigated to. So, okay, so our nav graph is actually, like we say, is actually an XML file. It just shows how each destination relates to one another. So we're going to create a new instance of the nav graph class. Okay. But however, okay, one thing you need to note is destinations from the nav graph are displayed to the user by the fragment container view. So I will just create an XML file and define the possible destinations. So, well, but let's just do this. So we're going to use fragment container view in our main activity now. Okay, fragment container view. Now, because our layouts are contained in fragment letter list .xml and then fragment word list, okay, .xml. Okay, our activity main.xml now. Okay, this detail, we need to actually delete this. We don't need it. Now, our activity main.xml. Okay, I think I can close this. Good. So our activity main.xml file, it no longer needs to contain the layouts for the first screen in our application. We don't need this again because we already have a letter list and word list for that. Okay, so instead we're going to propose it. What it will now do to contain the fragment container view, and that's going to act as a nav host for our fragments. It's going to act as a host for our fragments. Okay, so let's do this. So I'm going to change this to, oh, okay, my popping up is back. So fragment container view. Okay. I'm going to change the name to Nav Host Fragment. That's the ID rather. Nav Host Fragment. Okay, this is good. Pop-up is back. Okay, so match parent. Well, we don't need it. We don't need this. We also don't need to pad it. We don't even need these tools anyway because we're not using a recycler view. So this is fine. So this is just a container to host the fragments. Okay, to hold the fragment. Now, but another thing, another important stuff we need is, okay, we can add it below the ID, is the name. There's a name attribute. Now, this name attribute, okay, we're going to set it to Android X dot navigation dot fragment dot nav host fragment. Okay. Let's see. I hope I'm not Android X dot navigation dot fragment. Okay. I think I don't know, probably Android dot name. Okay. Why are we having an error here? Let's do this again. Android X dot navigation dot fragments dot nav host. Okay, well, I guess I'll just fix that later. Let's just finish up that. Okay, so while you can actually specify a specific fragment for these attributes, you can actually, but we use nav host fragments. Okay, and the reason is because it allows your fragment container view to navigate between fragments. Now there's another property, default nav host. Okay, but it's for the app namespace, default nav host. Okay, and then I'm going to pass this to what's true. So I think I need to import this. Namespace is not bound. Okay, so I need to get this app namespace. Sorry, where was I? Main. Okay, so we need this app namespace. I need to get it from somewhere. Do we have it somewhere here? Let me see that. Okay, so we're missing that, and I guess that's one of the reasons why. But I'll think I'll get Nav Host. Okay, I think my Android Studio is still misbehaving. Okay. Then we have, I think I'll just fix that. Nav graph. Okay, this is another property that we actually would need. So the nav graph. So let me just do this and I'll explain. Okay, the nav graph. So this points to an XML file for the graph. This points to an XML file for the graph. Okay. So so we have the app.nav graph. Okay, nav graph. So this is going to point to the actual nav graph that we will create. So don't worry, let me just put, this is going to be the name. So nav, this is going to be the name. Nav underscore graph will be the name, and then this will be like it's more like a folder where this guy is. So okay, so let me just explain that while I'm going to fix that. Okay, I'll fix that. Now, so our app, the nav host, okay, we are setting it to what's true. Now, what this does is that it allows the fragment container to interact with the navigation hierarchy. Like, for example, if the system's back button is, if you press the back button, okay, then the container will navigate back to the previously shown fragment, okay? So navigate to the previously what's shown what's fragment, just like what happens, okay, when a new activity is created. So that's why we are setting the nav host to be what true. Okay, and then for the nav graph, we're going to actually create a nav graph. Okay, so but this is, you now set the nav graph property, we set it to the nav graph that we are going to actually create. Okay, we're actually going to set it to. So I may actually, let me manually, I guess I'll just manually impute this for that app stuff. The namespace, XMLs, okay. HTTP. Yep. That should solve XM elements. Okay, so I really don't, Elements Android doesn't have required layouts, height and layout to it. Really? That's not true. Okay. So let's, I guess I may just actually create this thing from scratch to avoid this setup that we're having here. Okay, so you know what? Let's just take this out, okay? And so these are fragment container views. So we want it to match parent. Okay. Okay. So let's now add this stuff again. Let's do this stuff again. So ID is ID here. Nav Host fragments. Okay. So hold on. Okay, Nav Host fragments, and then the name. So let's try Android X dot navigation. Under X dot navigation dot fragments dot nav host fragment. Okay, why is this thing still saying? Okay, well, let me try something. Let me try something. Okay, that doesn't still work. Well, let's use our frame layout. Okay, and then let's try our app namespace. Default. Default nav host. Okay, so we're setting that to be true. Okay, so I think that solves. So our app namespace is fine. And then we have the nav graph, which we will create. Okay, the nav graph, and just set it to navigation. So go to navigation file, you will see nav underscore graph. Okay, so that's that. We're still having this. I think the Nav Host provides the Android suitable for Fragment. Okay. Let's see. This is basically what we are using. Match parents, Android name, Android X dot navigation, that's fragments. Okay, so everything seems fine. So why is it giving us invalid value? Let's clean this. And probably just rebuild stuff. Let's see, probably something we are missing. But let's move on. Actually, let's move on. We don't have time. Let's create our navigation graph now. Let's set up our navigation graph. So to set up our navigation graph, okay, we're actually just going to create a nav graph. Remember, we said it's an XML. Okay, remember, we said it's an XML. So, excuse me. So I'm going to go to, let's see. So you can actually just go to File, okay, New, and then I'm going to say, let's see. Okay, sorry, not here. So yeah, Android resource file. Okay, so I'll click on that Android resource file. Then I'm going to name it nav graph, just like I named it in the XML file. Nav graph, and then the resource type is navigation. So this is how you create, and then I'll say okay. So so we have a dependency issue here. The minimum, one or more issues found in checking. Okay, don't worry. Let's just leave this out first. I'll figure out what this issue is. Unknown fragments. It allows a layout to okay. Okay, include different layouts. At layout editing time, the specific as is not known, so you can choose which layout you would like revealed. Okay, well, I think so let's actually now do, so what do we do now? We now add our fragment. So I'm going to click on this icon here, new destination. So this should actually load, so we can actually see our fragments. You can actually search So, but this is another place you can actually create your fragments from here. You can actually create fragments from here. Also, this is another place we could have. Okay, so I think this is taking a lot of my time. So I may just I don't want to actually do it in code. It's really taking a lot of my time to load. So sorry, let's restart. Let me restart this Android Studio again. Probably that would make things a bit better. Okay. Here. Did I actually? I thought I closed this. Okay, sorry. I closed the project instead of the Android Studio itself. Okay, so let's open Android Studio again. Please, if you have any questions, of course, just signify. Let's get back to it. Okay, so I hope this actually works now. We are actually out of time though. Actually out of time. Let's see. Save ads. I think everything is fine there. Okay. So let's see. Okay, and that should be almost done, so we can move on. Okay, updating, loading resources. Okay, let's see if, let's see, does it load these guys? Okay, that's good. So I'm going to choose my fragments, going to add. Okay, so that's fine. So now whichever fragment actually has this home icon on it will be the first fragment that will be what's displayed. That will be the fragment that will be displayed first. Okay. So of course we want it to be the letter list as list of what letters. So to create a we're going to now create a navigation action. Okay, and how do we do it? I'm just going to hover on this small circle here. Let me zoom in a bit. I actually just see it. I'll click on it and then drag to this point. So this creates what? An action. You can see action here. Okay, so you see it has an ID, it has a destination. Okay, and then you have an action, letter list fragment to word list what? Fragment. That is the word action. Okay, now another thing is you can specify arguments for the word list fragment now. Now, of course, when navigating between activities, we use the intent. So we specified an extra so that the selected letter could be passed to the word list fragment. Now, navigation also supports passing parameters between destination, okay, and does it in a safe way. That's why we actually implemented the save args. Okay, so I'll select this word list fragment now. Okay, and then this destination, and then in the attributes under here where you have arguments, okay, you can actually I'll just click on the plus button. Let me open it up. So nothing to show. I'll click on the plus button to create a new argument. And the argument should be the letter and the type should be string. So argument name is letter, type should be what? String. Okay. So of course you can see a lot of things. You can specify if it should be an array, if it should be nullable, or whatever. But for now we just want to. So I'll just add this. So that means this guy has what? An argument, or passing an argument. Now, so remember I said whatever has this home icon, okay, is going to be the start destination. Okay, that's going to be the start destination. Okay, so this is basically what we just need to do for the nav graph editor. For now, this is just basically what we need to do. So now we need to perform the navigation action. So in our letter adapter, that was where we actually did that. Here that we had the whole intent and then start activity. So I'm going to change that. So I'm just going to delete this whole concept, this whole on-click listener here, everything here. I'm going to delete it. Okay, so I'm going to create an action variable. Now, so okay, let me just see. So we have the, I'm looking for what? Yeah. So when you created the nav graph and the like, so there was some generated classes. You can see letter list fragment, what? Directions. Okay, so I'm going to use that dot action. I'm using it to assess that action that I was created. Okay, and then I need to pass in what? An argument, because it is taking an argument from what we actually, we created an argument here in our nav graph for this guy. So I'm going to pass that argument here now, and the argument is letter. Okay, but let me just pass in this. Okay, let's just pass in this now. So I know, don't worry about this letter list. This was what's auto-generated. Okay, the automatically generated after I just built the project and we implemented navigation and the likes. Okay, it was auto generated, and that's where the save acts plugin that we added comes in. Okay, the actions created on the nav graph are actually turned into code that you can actually use. You can actually use it. So the names, however, of course, you can see it's actually intuitive. Action letter list fragment to word list fragment. Okay, so that's actually what that. Okay, so let's move on. Now, how do we now navigate? So I'm going to use our holder property, holder dot. I'll get my view dot. Then we have a method called find nav controller. We need the navigation controller because that was what we use. So we can, with the navigation controller, we can now call the navigate method. And where do we want to navigate to? We pass in our action variable. Okay, this is our action. This is our action. So we just passed it. We created a variable to store it, and then we'll pass in that action. So now let's configure our main activity, because this is the final piece. Okay, the final piece of this setup is here. So we'll just do some few changes to our unresolved reference detail activity. Okay, yeah, take that out. Okay, so our main activity, we need to do some just a little change. So I'm going to create a nav controller property here. I'm going to say private. Oh, no. Okay. What's up? Okay, we are missing something. Good. So in our class, listen, I'm going to do private, a late init var. Talked about late initialization. I'm going to say nav controller, and this is going to be of the nav controller type class, okay, of type. So this is just a late init variable. We'll initialize it later, so it's a promise. Now, after our set content view, okay, I'm going to now get a reference to our nav host fragment, okay, and of course, this actually nav host fragment is the ID of our fragment container. So let me open that up. Okay. The ID is what? So let me good arranged for us. So you can see the ID is nav. So I need a reference to this. Okay. So let me close out these guys. Okay. So I'll create a variable. Let me call it so nav host. Let me just call it nav host. Okay. Now I'm going to call, so don't worry. Let me just do this. Support fragment manager dot find fragment by ID. We want to find a fragment by ID. And what fragments do we want? r.id.nav host what fragments. Okay, but trying to get that what, trying to find a fragment by its what ID. And this is going to be, we're going to cast it as the nav host fragment. And then we'll now initialize our nav controller. So nav host dot nav controller. Okay, so this is just to set up our nav what controller. Okay, then another thing we'll do is to call, there's what we'll call setup action bar with nav controller. So this is going to help us respond to you know, it actually just ensures that our action bar, okay, and the buttons are like the menu option button in your letter list fragment to ensure that it is visible. That's basically what we're doing here. So I'm going to pass the nav controller into it. And then the last thing is there's a method called on support navigation what up. But no, we're going to override it. So let me come down here. On support navigation up. So I'm going to override this. So this method is what allows you to handle the up button. Okay, what you know as back button actually was called up button. Okay, so so we're not going to return the default. So what we'll now do is say nav controller. We'll use our nav controller dot navigate up. Okay, we'll call that. So it's either that, or if there is no fragments before that, okay, it's just called the super dot on support navigation up. Okay, so that's that. So at this point now, we have all the components in place to get our navigation working. Okay, so now that navigation is, we have performed navigation using fragments instead of intents. Of course, the intents, everywhere that we have intent now, we actually have to remove it because it will not actually work. Okay, intent will not actually work again. So in our word list fragment, so you see we have a lot of errors here. Well, this is not really an error per se. So this is not supposed to be here. Yeah. This is on create. Okay. Sorry. I need to find out why. Let me cut this and then take this. Okay. So, okay, it's fine. It's fine. So let's get the arguments in our word list fragment. Remember, we are passing data to the word list. Okay. So now let's get it. Okay. Let's now get that. So with this, we don't need intent anymore because intent won't work. We're using fragments. Okay. So intent would work. So I'm going to do something now. Okay. I'm going to create a property. Let me say private. Let's init var. Okay, I think we have about 5 minutes. Let's see if I can finish this. I'm going to call it letter ID, and this is going to be of type string. Okay, it's going to be of type string. Now, what I want to do is to, now in our onCreate, okay, so it's in our onCreate, we actually have to get the, when you're using fragments, you get your any argument that's been passed, okay, you get it in your onCreate. Okay, you get in your what onCreate, not in onCreate view or on view created. So I'm going to override my onCreate now. Okay, and then I'm going to use the argument property you can see it's of type bundle. So I'll say arguments dot, so I'll use the dot let, or I will explain. You get to understand some of all these things, but the time. So I'll call my letter ID and then initialize it. Say it. Remember I talked about lambdas. So it dot get string, because it's actually a string. And what do we want to get? We want to get what? Letter. Okay. But of course, we have to convert it to what? String. So, of course, it's possible to get a null. So let's do this. And for some reason, I want to also make this. So let me make this guy nullable so that I don't have to use this. Okay. Let's do that instead. So the reason is because it's possible for arguments to be optional. Okay. So it's possible for arguments to be what? Optional. So that's why we're actually doing that. So this code will actually execute assuming argument is not null. Okay. Well, yeah, so that's just that. So if if your argument is actually null, it will just not execute. So that's just to be what? Safe. Okay. That's actually just us being safe. But let me just we have about 5 minutes more. Okay, so let me just see if I can finish this quickly. So we can run this. Okay, so let's now access our letter ID. Okay, so in our recycler view, the adapter now, so I don't need all this activity, guys. I don't need all this. Okay, so I'm just going to pass in the letter ID here. Okay, and then our require context. Okay, so we're going to run the app, but yeah, let me run that and then I'll explain, say what I wanted to say. Why are we having, you know what? Okay, let me try that again. Undestroyed view. Okay, so let's run this now. So what exactly is bundle? Okay, for some of us that actually was asking. So just think of it as a key value pair that is used to pass data between classes. Okay, just think of it like that. A key value pair that is used to pass data between what? Classes. Okay, you've actually used bundle when we actually use intents.extras.getString. Okay, we actually made use of that. Okay, so that's basically just think of it like that. Key value pair. You use it to pass data between classes. Your classes could be activities or it could be fragments, whichever one that's the case. Okay. Okay, so let's do that. So, well, yeah, while we're waiting for that, another thing, well, this is just to, so you can actually change the label of your fragments. Okay, you can change the label of your fragments. So you can either do it in code here or here. Wait, so on this particular guy, so I think you may actually have an error, but a bug, but has to be grounded. But let me just show you this before we run. So here the label is fragment letter list. Okay, fragment letter list. So since it's the first, this one is the first distance. So I'm just going to the first screen. So I'm going to just put the app name, the application name there. For this one, I'm just going to say, let me just say word list. Okay, and of course, I think that should be that. So you can actually see that here. Okay, so that's actually that. Okay, running it should actually work, of course. I guess I just have some Gradle stuff to sort out, but I'll actually do that I'll do that later. But actually this is basically how you implement fragments. Okay, actually out of time, there's another something else that should be done by 9. So if you have any questions, please just make use of the Slack channel. I'll definitely be online to answer any questions you have. Okay, but I think today is, yeah, we're going to call it timeout today. So we'll meet in our next class on Wednesday. Okay. So thank you very much, guys. Okay. Have a wonderful night rest.